It's 7:02. Let's call this meeting to order. Before we begin anything other than, we're going to stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a pretty full meeting tonight, and I will open the floor to Mr. Public. Will you stand in case you have anything to say? Stand just for your notice. At the end of my meeting, I do have something slotted in there. So that's a stand comment, if any. Again, tonight we have a budget overview from Lynn, and then we have the Fire Chief, Bill McCarthy, Police Chief, Charles Gray, and emergency, is Jeff Coco?
He's coming, he has a meeting, and he says he'll be running a little
Okay.
bit, so we'll put him at the end.
And that's fine. And then with Director James Stanford, we have the review of the public works as well as the water and sewer enterprise funds. With that, I will turn it over to Lynn, and up to bat after that will be Chief Gray.
Thank you for having me.
Yep.
I'm just gonna do a high overview of the budget. I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty details. I'll do the high points, and then questions after everybody else goes through will be fine. That way it won't hold up the other departments. They can explain their budgets, if questions that you have, and then,
So the process I like to do,
Yep.
Lynn, is that high overview.
Mhm.
I want to hear from the department budgets.
Yep.
Similar next week, and then I do want you up to bat, because I'm not wasting all these little green little stickers on nothing.
got it.
And they're not to challenge you and different things, it's just to put the pieces together, not just for myself, but for others on the committee.
Yep, not a
So,
problem.
okay.
Okay, so, on the general fund budget, we have a 4.3% budget increase over FY19, so that, the budget is at 103,415,000. School budget is increasing 3.75 over the FY19, which has been unanimously approved by the school committee. They've already approved the budget and they're proceeding. Amongst the school budget, we're giving them a one-time increase of $120,000, and that is specifically to fund SPED programs, and that's anticipated in future years that will be self-supporting. These were programs that, when Jen Price was here, she had recommended putting them in the budget for FY19, and we're finding that we needed additional funding to cover those programs. The present superintendent, Greg Gilligan, believes that moving forward into 2020, that they'll be self-supporting. That's the goal. Okay, so he'll be able to analyze it a little bit better after we get through this year. The municipal spending budget is at a 2.9% overall over FY19. And we have added 2 FTEs in the municipal side budget. One is for a project manager with Public Works, which Jim can speak to later in his presentation, and a fire training officer for the fire department. Now that position, when we originally had funded in FY18, didn't fund it in FY19 because they never filled it in FY18. They just didn't get around to it. And then we brought it back in 20 because it is more of a need. And what they'll do is, he can explain it further as to what the shifting within the department, and then they'll fill the empty position.
So.
And it's a net.
Had we filled it back then, would we be seeing that same incremental increase this year? Yeah.
Yes, because the salary would be the same, and you'd see the COLA increase on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have changed the increase. The increase would have been steady. Yep. On support services, there was an increase of 2.2, which is, the support services is the departments that support not only the town but the school. It's the joint departments, which is auditing, purchasing, the IT department and facilities. That's increased by 2.2%, which is about $41,000, and that's mostly attributed into the IT department for the infrastructure of the software. It's a continuing cost which have escalated slightly. And we've added a new software, which has maintenance agreements and things over the years. On the reserves, we're recommending in total, 1.4 million of reserves coming from free cash. That's broken down with 350,000 going into capital stabilization, 238,000 going into the regular stabilization fund, and that is to maintain the financial reserve policy at the 1.5% of previous year's revenue. So that number fluctuates from year to year. Last year it was only 71,000, year before was in the 60s. But because the revenues are growing, that adjustment to bring it to the 1.5 changes annually. So that brings it to 238. And then we have $194,000 going into the OPEB trust. Now that's made up of the regular $75,000, which I've been recommending in the operating budget for the last 3 years, and an additional $120,000 to pre-fund the 2 FTEs that we're asked for within the general fund budget, which is the project manager I just spoke about and the training officer. And the idea on that is we're hoping to get that through the OPEB committee that's been put together to put the OPEB policy in place, is to write this into the policy so that in future years, any FTEs that are added within a department or requested and are honored by the town manager will be also pre-funded, and the department will be responsible for pre-funding that. So they'll not only have to cover the salary, and then they'll have to take the one-time hit in that year only to pre-fund
the entire balance.
So we figure $60,000, and we've talked with an actuarial, and we'll do further work on this, but this was a rough estimate. We figure if somebody's staying and gonna retire, so they're here for 25, 30 years, you pre-fund it at $60,000 and it's being invested, over the years that's gonna grow and be enough to fund that individual person. And if.
What kind of a dent do you think that would make in the?
Well, it all depends. If we start adding a lot of FTEs, we hope not to. But the thought is, you could pre-fund any one of these positions, and they might not retire from here. They could stay here 3 years and leave, and we'll have already pre-funded for them, and we're not gonna, you can't take it back.
Right.
So it's gonna stay there. So that's in addition to other options that we might come up with. But it helps. It's gonna,
Will help slow the growth.
exactly, right. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then on the enterprise funds, the water enterprise fund is increasing less than 2% from 19, which is 4.7 versus 4.6. This excludes any of the transfers to capital. This year, we're recommending to transfer $775,000 to cover the capital, so, which will in turn reduce our debt because we're not borrowing, which we haven't in the last several years. And that's $100,000 below FY19. So overall, the budget is still strong. We're growing at a very small pace. It's only increasing by, the contractual agreements between salaries and small minor increases on expenditures. So that's running very strong. The sewer enterprise fund is seeing a 1.8% increase over FY19, which is 4.74 versus 4.64, and that as well as excluding the capital transfer. And for sewer, we're transferring 375 versus 100 from last year, so that's an increase of 275. But the reserves have grown to be able to do this, and we're projecting, as you've seen in the capital, to do this out for the next 5 years. And we again, for the 8th consecutive year, not raised and are not planning to raise water and sewer rates, and are able to maintain the reserve balances.
So in general, I don't necessarily feel it would be an answer tonight. Maybe do some homework on my part.
Yep.
But it blows my mind in a very positive way. 8 consecutive years, there are no rate increases.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my bread and milk have increased quite a bit. Salary costs have gone up. I know you've
Yep.
controlled things there.
Yep.
So I'm actually a little surprised that there've been no increases, that even nominal amounts that would actually, we'd see something over the last
Yep.
8 years, so.
No, we have not. And if you remember in the past, I mean, I certainly do, because I've been here long enough, and this way before Andrew, we were changing the rates every year. And there was this really crazy calculation and spreadsheet that was created by, a contractor that nobody could figure out. You had to be a scientist to figure out the calculations that they were coming up with, and we changed them every year, and it was difficult. Bruce Thibodeau was here and worked with me on that spreadsheet for many, many months, and it was frustrating. And now that we're able to keep it at a steady level, it's been great, and we
From
have
my
no
level-
fluctuation.
From a high level perspective, how are you able to keep it at a steady rate?
Because we decided not to start changing them, and we maintained in our expenditures and our costs. We have brought the debt down continually. I mean, granted, we have had some larger projects which have driven some of the additional other fees, which are, water and sewer hookups and things like that over the years, which is accumulated, but it's a maintaining expenses, and the department does a great job of it. We've had minimal increases on expenditures if you look at it over the years.
How does that compare to other? Is 7 straight years unusual in Massachusetts or in our area?
I
Are other
can't
towns
speak to other
rising?
communities, but I haven't heard that, and,
Is it possible our rates were just too high to begin with, so 7 years of flat
mean,
kind of caught up?
well, I don't know that. We'd have to really analyze that further, but, I don't know that our
send me that
water rates are,
spreadsheet.
and water and sewer rates are very high.
I do enough science work already.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're that
It might put you
extremely high
underwater.
compared to other communities.
Right.
I don't know if, you guys have any knowledge of other water and sewer rates through other
They
communities.
vary
Right, throughout.
extensively.
Right, so, I mean, and like I said, the department manages their costs very well. Any department in town, as you can see over the budgets, they only budget for what they need, they're not absorbent, they spend as they need it, not just to spend. So we have a good group of, division and department heads that maintain that, so.
In the past, before those 8 years started, were you recovering your water hookups and all those other ancillary things, or maybe they're outside the water enterprise funds?
Nope, they were always in the water and sewer enterprise, yeah.
Were the other ones outside the water sewer enterprise, the water hookups?
Nope, they've always been incorporated. I mean, I guess I could look back and say, in the previous years, our debt was extremely high. I mean, our ratio of operating and revenue to debt was up at the 45, almost 50%. So we have brought that down drastically.
Absolutely.
Numbers are all wet.
Right.
Bada
No
boom.
pun intended, huh? And then finally, on the Stevens estate, okay? I'm expecting that FY19 will show a very small profit, but having said that, looking at the way the Stevens estate has been running, it's becoming to a point that I'm expecting it's not very profitable. And 2020 is going to be a difficult year for the Stevens estate. As you might have heard or seen on the Board of Selectmen's meeting, there was an RFP issued. We're working on the second one that will go out. We have a viable candidate that will, again, respond. And so that is kind of up in the air as to what will happen with the Stevens estate. Hopefully, this will be viable and it will come to fruition, and we will, change ownership or do something with the estate that will be very viable and make the estate what it should be. If it wants to be a function hall, I don't know. But right now, we have, the budget increase is minimal. The expenditures are rising higher than the revenues. They had requested, $70,000 to be taken from reserves to be used for capital. We reduced that down to 50, and most likely, we'll hold off on spending that. And where we're using it from retained earnings, if it doesn't get, if it gets transferred, it can be transferred back by no vote of town meeting, because it's a raised and appropriated fund that doesn't need town meeting to put it back. So just, so that everybody knows we're in the process, and we hope that otherwise, I don't think it will make it past December 31st.
Okay. How's that RFP going? Are there lots of responses?
Well, the first one went out, we only had one candidate that responded, and they didn't meet all the criteria on the RFP, because we had it quite a bit in there. So, we rejected that submittal, and we're going out to RFP again, and we're fine-tuning the requirements within the RFP. Giving them a longer time to respond, because we had such a short window for them to provide all of the documents that we were looking for. So we're expanding that time frame, and the candidate that did respond said that they will respond again, because they are extremely interested in it.
And they weren't structurally
Well, they weren't used to working with an RFP in a municipality and didn't realize the requirements were as
Is your
strict as
RFP on
they-
the website?
I don't know if they pull it down once we've, closed it out, I'm
Oh,
not
we
sure.
haven't put it back up yet. Okay.
Yeah, we haven't put it back up again yet. They're still working on it. It'll probably be at least another week or so before that gets up.
You have to submit like a form and
Yeah,
to,
to get a copy of
yeah,
it.
to get
Yep.
a copy of it and all
Yep.
that good stuff.
Okay.
Okay,
Susan, over to you. How you doing? You hanging in there?
of course. I'm
Thank you
fine.
very much.
Yeah, you guys.
Chief Gray.
Is everybody doing something?
Good, how about yourself? The accreditation going fine?
Yeah, so far so good.
I was thinking about that, it's like, oh, good, we haven't done up to bad on
Yeah,
Tuesday night in the
appreciate
middle of it, first day.
Today was a good day, 2 more days to go, and we're looking good.
Okay, good. So tell me about your budget for this, actually your accomplishments from last year, then your budget for this year, and what you got and what you didn't get.
The accomplishments from last year, we really got that radio project underway, but unfortunately, we found some more problems than we anticipated. The radio project was basically Verizon called and said that the copper, we're taking the copper away, and if you want to fix it, you have to pay for it, it's top dollar. So our communications director, Bonanno, went out with Andover. We put up the monopole and got fiber up to Bradford Hill, but it's still, there's still problems in the works with, as far as encryption goes. Haverhill's encrypted, Lawrence became encrypted, we're trying to become encrypted, but Cybercom didn't really, wasn't really, I don't want to use the word truthful, but they gave us product and we said, you know, this is what we're looking for. So we're in the process of backtracking and revamping that. And again, that's fire radio too, so we're really trying to ramp up the communications. We purchased the new radios last year, they're working great. It's just a matter of, you know, fine tuning and making sure this thing is gonna be sustainable for the next quite a few years. The traffic study, we started that, we purchased those traffic boxes, and that's been ongoing. We've got about 30 streets underway right now. I just gave those this acting town manager to distribute. The biggest thing is the ongoing cannabis legalization. That's the biggest problem we're dealing with. The legislature, as everyone knows, I don't think they really put a lot of thought into it when it came down to penalties. We have a lot of youth going down that road, and very simply because if you do a risk analysis, if you're an underage youth on a Friday night, if you get caught with alcohol or drunk driving, you're getting arrested, you're getting your car towed, you're losing your license, you're going to jail, you have to get a lawyer, you have to go to court, you have to pay a lot of money to get your license back. If you get caught with cannabis, there's no penalties because you don't have to pay them if you don't want to. So that's the biggest thing we're dealing with right now, is trying to educate the public and really try to get out on the front end of this thing and make sure that people are aware of it. We're using, yeah, there's penalties, but they have to like tell their parents, and $100 fine, which if you don't pay, it doesn't matter.
There's no driver's license?
No,
or
nothing at all. There's no implied consent law, so if you get caught, bring it back to the station. As it is right now, the implied consent law is if you get arrested under suspicion of drunk driving, I bring you to the station, I request you to submit to a breath test. If you don't, there's sanctions and penalties.
Right, right.
For the cannabis, there's nothing. So it's one of the biggest things we're dealing with. The ongoing opioid epidemic, we're dealing with that. Training with Narcan and getting everyone out in the community to just be as active as possible. You know, it's just one thing. It's one thing the North Andover is dealing with along with other communities, and it's just, you know, doing the best we can, trying to stay in front of it.
It has gone down over the last year, as if I recall from the readings that I've been recently, right? The opioid-
What's that?
The opioid crisis.
They've gone down, but
As far as the number of incidences?
the incidents that we're called to, because a lot of times they're distributing Narcan to people, they're using it on their own, not calling us, because they know if they call us, they're gonna get PC'd. And under the guidelines, we can bring them to Lawrence General Hospital, and then they can walk out the door. It's difficult.
Is the crime related to that down? Or,
The crime is, so we deal with the crime secondary to the opioid epidemic. We
Right.
deal with the people coming into town to go to Kohl's, Market Basket, TJ Maxx, to commit thefts, breaking into cars, breaking into houses, and then go to the city where the cost is down. So the secondary crimes are relatively, when I say down, I mean like the car breaks and stuff like that have been really down the past few years, but we're still dealing with the shopliftings and the larcenies at Kohl's, Market Basket. And those sometimes don't get reported because the companies have a hands-off policy. But, you know, and like I said, difference between shoplifting and larceny is if you walk into Kohl's with no money in your pocket with the intention of stealing things to go support your drug habit, that's not just shoplifting, that's larceny. So those are still relatively the same when loss prevention can work with us.
Tell me a little more about the community police officer program.
The Community Police Officer Program is one I wanted to start. I did this past summer, but I need to finalize it with the union. Basically, we have a traffic unit, and the traffic unit has been doing traffic since 2001 when I got out of the academy and started on the job. Traffic unit is good, but I want to make it better. And by Community Police Officer Program, it's not only traffic. If you saw the boat in Lake of Chickawick this past summer, we had the Lawrence Police boat out there patrolling. We have cops on bikes in the old center. A lot of times the SROs, during the summertime, they go back on patrol, they're missing the relationship they have with the kids. So by putting a community police officer out at the youth center, in the common, at the 4th of July fireworks, they're maintaining those relationships. It's an officer that you can use to basically, Lawrence has their own unit as well. And it's great to be able to send them, not only to do the fun stuff like that, but if we have a traffic issue, if there's complaints about speeders, to put them both out there and let them work together and just hammer the problem as opposed to pulling the patrol unit away.
Okay. I have some specific budget questions.
Sure.
I'm curious. Yeah, always fun to, especially you have the town manager here present, and you ask these pointed questions. Reserve police officers, you asked for 28,000, and you got 18. You okay with that?
Yeah, the reserves, unfortunately, we don't have as many as we used to. Let's see what we got here. So basically, the reserves are a good tool to have because they're not sworn full-time and they can work part-time, but they have to be trained, they have to have their training maintained, they have to go to a reserve academy, which is the same cost as a full-time academy now. So ideally, we want to get towards a full-time officer, and I was talking to the town manager today. In the next couple of years, you're going to see me presenting a budget where I'm going to look for an increase in personnel, because we haven't increased personnel since 2001. And with the amount of population North Andover's experienced in the last 20 years, the police is the same level as it was in 2001. So that's my goal. By having reserves, I can lower that a little bit. But in the meantime, I only really have 2 working reserves that I can use right now. So the cut is okay.
That's a good point, by the way. Sorry, again, putting the town manager on spot too.
Mhm.
Yep.
No headcount increase 2001, yet you're able to satisfy the public safety needs of the town for the last, 18 years?
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where we're doing a great job, but we're looking down the road at the problems lying in wait. And we can see that, the calls for service are getting more and more. We want to have a CPOP unit that we can get out there and interact with the public in a positive way, because the way things are in, this nation, police aren't exactly looked at as a positive field to be working in. So the more positive interactions we can have with the public, the better. By increasing the staffing levels, I'm looking for a 9th supervisor, a sergeant position, because right now we're running 8. Without boring everyone, the way the shifts work, we have a day shift, an early night, a late night, and a split shift. I want to eliminate the split shift and basically put 3 sergeants on every shift, and that's going to put a supervisor on the road. Right now, I'm running a supervisor on the day shift, the busiest shift, 2 days out of a 6-day rotation. So I'd like to get a supervisor out there that I really need to be able to interact and make sure things are being done right. So that's what's coming down. That's not going to be an increase in staffing. It's just going to be making a patrol officer a sergeant this year.
And that's in his FY '20 goals.
I saw that,
Right.
yeah.
Yep, it's been negotiated.
Sorry, Lynn. Is that perception about police officers impacting your ability to recruit talent, or are you having any problems with that?
Yes, it is. We just put out a request for a full-time officer position, and under the civil service rules, we send out, if we have 1 position, we have to send out letters to 3 people. All 3 sign, and then we have to have a vetting process.
Yep.
We put out a requisition for 1 person, and 1 person responded and 1 person signed. So that's just the tales of what's to come, because it's not just in North Andover, it's policing in general. So if you look at, a lot of times on social media, you'll see Baltimore Police Department's recruiting, Los Angeles, they can't get enough people in there to even apply for the job.
Okay. And part of that is the community policing
Right.
initiatives.
Absolutely.
Okay. Has it been helpful to have the new kind of, I'm going to use the wrong word, but the position that was just created in last year's budget for the social work, the town social worker, what's the appropriate
Yeah,
name?
I'm not,
Deanna Cruz?
Deanna
She's
Cruz.
been awesome.
yes.
And has that helped with some of these things we've been talking about for the last 20
Absolutely,
minutes?
100%. In fact, her very first case was, we brought her to the station, we handed her our case files on a subject in town who's been frequenting town hall lately that the town manager can tell you about is kind of a nuisance.
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff that we can handle as police department, because it doesn't fall under a drug issue, it doesn't fall under a
It's a
self-harm
mental health
issue.
issue.
Right, so we can hand
Right.
it to Indiana, and she,
It was last year.
last year, yeah, and, you know, on top of the drug work that we give her with, you know, it's more the mental health aspects that we're really feeding her.
Okay.
And she's hitting them out of the park, it's been great.
That's awesome. And that kind of frees you guys
It
up.
frees up us up a lot, and it takes it out of the courthouse, because right now, we would be summonsing people for minimal crimes and incidental crimes, just to get them in the system, so the court can say, you know,
You need help.
you need help.
I
So
see.
now it's going right to the end, it's been awesome.
And the title is Community Support Coordinator.
Thank you. I apologize.
I know, there's a
didn't know
lot,
the right words.
lot of, yeah. CSC.
Ratio of how many officers should be there based on the population?
Again, that's kind of a, you know, you look at other communities, but then you look at what they have for revenues, and you look at what they have for crime rate. It's a whole different animal. You can't really have a ratio, a way to figure it out for everybody. So you basically go with what you have. What I'm planning on doing is presenting a sort of a report to say that, you know, our population's gone up a lot. We've increased the number of teachers because of the size of the classrooms. We've increased the number of firemen. We need to start looking at police too, because it's getting to the
So
point
how
where-
would you decide whether you need 2, you 4, 5? I mean, how would you decide
What we're
that?
gonna do is we're gonna look at the calls for service, the population, the amounts of, you know, complaints as far as traffic complaints versus, you know, domestic complaints versus larceny complaints and whatnot. And then we're gonna also talk about what we feel is adequate for the town to make sure that we can provide public safety, where we're not just going to handle the call and move on because we're busy, you know, where it seems to be getting there on some of the shifts. We're gonna be able to sit down and investigate and make sure these people feel like they've gotten their services worth.
So we haven't added any head count to the police department since at least 2001, when you.
Since I got out of the
since you
academy,
got here.
I went on the cops grant.
Do you- We have a $5 million budget scheduled for this year. Do you remember what the budget was? 2001?
I was, no, I couldn't even, I won't,
Right, but it
We
would,
can
even
get
guess.
that.
Yeah.
maybe it would be
Yeah.
lower, like a lot, 2 or 3 million.
I would say it's definitely lower, yeah.
So that's, two things strike me. The population has absolutely grown since 2001 here in the town. Our needs have grown, but the head count hasn't. But the expenditure has probably gone up by $1.5 million, 2 million, oh, I'm guessing. So it's the same department, but it's costing 50% more 17 years later. It's, do you feel like you're stressing the budget right now, that you're
I wouldn't
you're
say we-
trying to get it, do you consider underfunded?
No, I
Are
wouldn't
you
say it's
properly
underfunded.
funded right
I
now?
think we're properly funded right now,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you why, because, you know, with Andrew and Lynn, you know, they gave us, what was the increase this year, with 2.5%? But like she said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, we're not just spending money to spend money. We're trying to really think about where we need to have increases and where we don't need to have increases. And, you know, whether it's a capital expense budget, we're taking some money out of that to put down the road, that's fine. We're doing well. But again, it's a problem lying in wait. It's something I see 2 or 3 years down the road that's gonna be, if there's a tragedy that happens, I don't wanna be able to say, what was a staffing issue? Because I wanna be able to say, let's think about this now and look at it, and maybe in 2 or 3 years, we
Did
do
the head
need.
count go up and then come down, or has it been
It's
pretty
been
flat
level.
for 17 years?
Been flat.
Wow.
I assume though we're leveraging technology in a way that we weren't in 2001.
Oh, yeah,
So-
without a doubt.
So you're allowed to be, you're more efficient by utilizing technology than you perhaps were then.
We're efficient with the technology and the staffing, but what it comes down to is boots on the street.
I understand.
And if there's not enough boots on the street, we have to hold people over for mandatory shifts. You know, during the summertime, it's not uncommon for people to be held over on Friday, Saturday nights on a regular basis. You know, and that means you go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and not be able to go home at 4 o'clock because you have to work, there has to be minimum staffing levels in town.
So how does that, that's part of one of the questions I actually had, in this budget was dispatcher overtime. So is that just a function, or just in general, in terms of your staffing? So you have people that you have to hold because you need minimum,
Same thing, dispatchers, the communication officers run to a shift, and if someone calls in or takes a vacation day and no one wants to take the overtime, someone gets held. So the overtime gets spent no matter what, because there
I
has
see.
to be 2 on the shift at all times.
okay.
So that's what drives.
And there isn't
overtime.
like a flow date, it doesn't
Right.
make sense to
If
have
there's a
another
lot of
person.
vacation, people, take vacation, or somebody might be out on 111F because they've been injured or something, that will drive the overtime up, because
see.
you have to fill that slot.
So by
can't
having
look it
extra bodies just for police,
Right.
it would be if we're running an extra officer on the street, if someone happens to call and say, I could take a night off, it's not gonna be a forced overtime fill, it'll be just minimum manning.
Thank you.
How easy it is to get an officer, a reserve police officer compared to a regular full-time officer?
I'll tell you, and I talked to the town manager about it, it's difficult, because if you talk to Human Resources, the way this state works, if you want a reserve or a full-time officer, you have to put out a civil service card, you have 2 weeks to sign it, at the end of 2 weeks, they come in, we process them with a background check, medical screen, psychological screen, and assuming all those appointments are right away, maybe you're talking a month and a half. Then they have to go to the academy and train, whether it's full-time or part-time. That's 5 months. Okay, so now we're at 6.5 months, 7 months. And then when they get out, they have to field train for at least 3 months to make sure they're proficient on the street to work on their own. So now we're talking 10 months down the road. From the time we said we need somebody, it's gonna be 10 months, and that's assuming everything fell into place. Right now, if we had a full-time officer, the next academy is not until the fall. So we're talking about hiring an officer, a full-time or part-time, and we're not gonna be able to utilize them on the street for staffing until over a year and then later.
But we do have some reserve officers that we can pull in on a list now that are available.
They're available, but one has an academy training but the other one, now they have to go to a full-time academy. And like I said, the costs are the same, so it's almost to the point where, why have a reserve if we can just get a full-time officer?
But a full-time officer generates the OPEB, which is the
Yes,
additional cost,
that's
which is
exactly
what-
why I was asking.
Mhm.
yeah.
Just out of curiosity, who is a reserve officer? Like, how does that, do they work a full-time job somewhere else, or they want to be
I
a full-time
was-
officer?
I
or-
was a reserve from 1999 until 2001, and I worked nights, weekends, holidays, shifts that the full-time officers didn't want to work.
I see.
So I had the same police powers on the street, and still did the job, but I wasn't getting a full-time salary,
And you're not entitled to retirement benefits?
not until you become full-time.
But then when you do become a full-time, if you're hired as a full-time, then you can buy back that time to go towards your retirement.
Your capital request was substantially higher than what you ended up with. Is there something you're gonna be doing without?
Yes, a pickup truck. We're trying to replace the 324 that's out back. It's pretty much rusted out. We had Cody's been nice enough to put plates on the bottom to keep people's feet from falling through.
Been
But-
there, done that.
Yep, so that was one of the things that I talked to Lynn about, and, we're just not gonna put that in the budget this year, so we're gonna make do with what we have, and we'll put it in next year.
Okay.
The chief,
Chief?
chief pay went 136 to 210, back to 139. Was that
Where are
when
you?
the,
What are you?
the chief pay? 136,000 in 2016?
What page are you on, Chuck?
65, sorry.
I don't have that.
60.
Yeah.
You talking about my salary?
Yeah.
I went to 210?
So went 136 to 210 to
back there.
139.
Does that say Solomon on it?
Well, I wonder, is that when you became chief,
Actually,
what happened there?
Fire. That's a
No,
question
no,
for the
say-
next guy.
No. Hold on, police department, top of the page, chief.
Okay,
F-
so you gotta understand, we had two, that was changing
Do we have
chiefs.
two chiefs at the time?
We
Okay,
had two
that's
chiefs at the
right.
same time, we had
Yeah.
payout and things like that.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
true.
So that would be a question for me, not.
But if you wanna give me 210, all in favor?
I know, he almost fell over, he was like, where did that come from?
And you're not working in Methuen.
Yeah, exactly, I was gonna say, that says North
I
Andover.
see.
Got it.
So
Okay.
anytime you see it, because I have to keep it in the same buckets.
When there was a prior chief
Yes,
that left.
that
Okay,
left, paid out, and then
Got
the
it.
new chief came on board.
It does look like it was an awesome year.
Yeah, it
wasn't
would've been.
it? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief Gray?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I think I just came on the board when you got, I don't know how you say appointed.
Pointed.
So it's like 3 years, 4 years now?
3 years, 2.5
3
going
years.
on 3, yeah.
So what, looking back, so what do you think about the last 3 years? Coming into that role and.
I think it's been
where you-
outstanding. We've made a lot of positive steps forward. I took the reins and I think I breathed some fresh air into the department. We've increased morale and people basically getting people excited about the job again. We've added a motorcycle unit, we're trying to get the CPOP unit. We're facing a lot of criticism from the public and stuff like that, so it's a matter of keeping this job where people want to work it and keeping the integrity and the honesty and the whole aspect of being the police. And, in 3 years, we've accomplished a lot. And I'm looking forward to the next 3, and the next 6, and the next 9.
Yeah, I think I can confirm. I think it's being a resident and here now for 9 years. I feel very comfortable with living here in North Andover, and I don't think the police is overburdened. That I'm all over the place. I can't move. I think it's a fine, good
We have
line
one
and
of the
balance.
best, actually, yeah.
So
I think we have one
Yeah.
of the best.
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm proud of the department, and I'm proud of everyone that works there. And, when people call and complain, we understand their complaints, and we try to answer them as best we can. But, we're not into writing speeding tickets for someone doing 37 in a 35-mile-an-hour zone. The letter of the law says do this, but it's more the spirit of the law we get people to try to follow. Thanks.
Do you ever get a chance to, just a question, to go to schools and actually talk to kids and explain to them exactly what the, sorry? No, about the police and the public relationship and,
Yep, we tried, we just did it this past Friday. We had, one of our female officers went and did a women's thing at the high school. We speak to not only, high school kids, but middle school and elementary, where we really have to get our hooks in, because we're seeing that the middle schools,
yes,
is-
middles.
Yes, and, even this past health fair we have this drunk cart. Now, if you saw it on social media, it's this cart. And we bought goggles, and we put them, the kids in there, and we're just like, here, in a safe, controlled environment, get out and see it, and they see it. And then we say to them, hey, look at this person. This is what you want to look for and stuff. And they're actually like making observations and learning what we're looking for and seeing it's not that hard. And then, so they're really understanding it. And we had a lot of interest in people that wanted to ask us, how to get on the job and stuff like that, but.
Yes, and make them feel comfortable to talk to the police. I remember once going to the police station for
Yeah.
some complaint, and I had taken my little kids that time, and the chief actually asked my son if he wanted to see how it looked from inside.
Yeah.
And he was so scared. No. So
Yeah.
so I want to know how you can make these kids feel comfortable with the police instead of fearing the police.
One of the things we do is the officer of the day item. You ever want to see that? It's a high stake item at the schools for the fundraisers. But we bring a child in with their family, pick them up for school, bring them to the station, give them a tour, give them all kinds of stuff, and let them see everyone interact and talk, and send them to school. And we show up in school, driving them to school in the cruiser, and they love it. It's great. There's like literally like 12 or 13 every.
There's a lot of different kids.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, everyone wants to do it because it's
super cute.
yeah, it's great. Everyone, but it's a positive thing for the community. So of course we're going to do it.
Very good.
Well, I think that sort of covers it right now.
Awesome.
On behalf of the town, thank you very much for all your service.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Chuck. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Fire budget. This is Fire Chief Bill McCarthy, William McCarthy.
Bill's fine.
He's been on board, what, 3 years too?
Yeah, I came in, I believe, 2 months before the police chief. Yeah, so I'm in my, ending my 3rd year, beginning my 4th.
Okay. And things going well?
Things are going well. This past year, when I took over as chief, my goal was to increase mercantile inspections, which we accomplished this year. The engine companies are getting into more businesses than we had in the past. We wanted to standardize training. So our deputy, who's our training officer, has set up monthly training. So every shift, we run 4 shifts, and every shift does that training for the month, and then the next month is a different type training. So we've accomplished that. We run into the similar things that the police department has. You referenced the community service coordinator. We've used her quite frequently also, so it's a very, very valuable position. In fact, I just received a email from her last night letting me know about one of the cases that she was on. 2 of our EMTs were at a elderly residence where the gentleman did not want to go to the hospital but needed to. They called her out, and with her guidance, working together, they were able to get this gentleman to the hospital, who ended up having emergency surgery. So that's just one of the cases, so it's been a very, very valuable position. So both the police department and the fire department have been using her regularly, so.
Is she on call?
She's not officially on call, but if you call her, she will come.
Awesome.
So she's
That's very valuable.
very, very valuable position, so.
Do you foresee that being an addition, not immediately, obviously, but an additional need going forward, that kind of work will be necessary, that maybe another person, when the funds are
Yeah,
available,
I mean,
would
we
be-
might, maybe it's something the town needs to think about expanding that, because it has been successful.
It's definitely a position that I think we need to review and see if there's a need. I mean, this is basically the first year that she's been on board, so we're gonna have to analyze this year and look into next year, and talking with her and seeing how many, calls and how many cases she's been dealing with, and whether the workload for her is just too large just for one person. I mean, you gotta understand, there's a lot of different things going on in the community that she is helping with the instruction from the police and fire, so.
I would assume there'd be some overlap with the schools too, if an additional
Yes.
person was added,
Yep,
where it would
she
be a
is
shared
working with the schools
service.
quite a
Yeah.
bit as well. I can't speak to what she's doing, because I know, but she works with the school quite a bit as well, so, yeah, it's invaluable.
That's a big one. As baby boomers like me sort of go into the dementia world in retirement,
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I know.
there may be more need for
Yeah.
people like her, so.
Is there a way that the departments quantify what she's, in terms of
I don't
an analysis, like, what does that save the department when she's able to come in here and get this gentleman to the hospital? Do you have ways of quantifying her, or is it mostly anecdotal?
Well, I think it's something we're gonna have to, it's new.
Yeah.
I mean, she is new. I've called her myself. When there was a reported hoarding situation. So it does allow her to show up, and it can free up the fire department, because now it's something that she can
Right.
can assist the homeowner with. We didn't necessarily need to be there after that.
Right.
But I think it's something that we do have to, keep some data on it and see how it's working out and how often we use. But it's been very successful so far.
Great.
So what are some of the accomplishments you had this last year, Bill?
Well, obviously, the engine company inspections, we increased that by 20%. We established an online burning permit process. In the past, what we did was, we actually used an outside company. There was a charge, there was a small charge, but it was a charge. Now, we do it through the People Forms. Chris McClure helped us develop that. He worked with our deputy chief, so now we're able to, residents can go online, see if we allow burning that day. And then what we're able to do is, we're actually able to see on a GIS map where they're burning that day. So we can see how many residents are burning on a particular day and where they are. It's helpful in the event that someone calls for a report of smoke odors. Well, we can look and see if there's something in that area, we have an idea. We still have to respond, but it gives us an idea of what it might be coming from. So that was something that came on this past year. We're also looking to do that possibly with Adopt a Hydrant program, work with a People Forum. If the public wants to adopt a particular hydrant, that'll show up on a GIS map also. And maybe once the hydrant is cleared, there's a process of them, letting us know online that that hydrant has been cleared. So Cambridge does that.
What would that involve, adopting this hydrant? What would it,
Well, we ask people to do it now. We don't know who's doing it.
okay.
This would be a way of us knowing how many people have actually said, hey, I'm gonna take care of that hydrant in front of my house. I'm gonna take care of that hydrant 2 houses.
Someone, when you say take care of the hydrant, so the hydrant's
Shovel
in
it
my
out.
house, just basically shovel it.
Yeah, shovel it out. We don't care, we're not
okay.
gonna tell them to paint it, but,
Okay.
yeah, it's, but again, we have over, I believe,
So for the last 35 years, I have
1,600
adopted
hydrants.
my
hydrant and I just didn't know it. I
Yeah,
didn't know.
yeah.
Okay.
So we have over 1,600 hydrants.
Okay.
Again, the guys went out after the storm and started, but again, we go out, last year we went out, we're approaching 5,000 runs a year. So, we're quite busy.
Yeah.
In between the incidents that we go on, there's training, there's things at the station, the work, we get them out there to do hydrants. We're not gonna hit every hydrant, and that's why we rely on the public.
Oh, yeah.
I do my too. All right, Tim, I'll check down there.
It's done.
But again, it's important because you can see how long it takes to clear out a hydrant. It adds minutes, and that's our water source. So it's important. So it's something that we're working closely with the IT department. Chris McClure has been fantastic with us. We're a little behind the police department as far as technology IT. They were on very quick. We still do a lot with pen and paper, but we're looking to move into the online permitting. So we're moving in that direction. We are gonna do leave scheduling this year, similar to what the police department does. It's called On Duty. I put that in my budget for this year. So we're catching up technology, but Chris McClure has been very, very helpful, and his whole department, they do a great job.
Good.
So,
So they are building the technology in-house, the applications.
right, so what we do now is we have computer-aided dispatching. I want to add to that program, so you're going to see there's an increase in my software budget. I'm looking to add a program, and we're looking at a couple different programs where we can get better data. The system we have now, it's called IMC. It's an incident reporting system, but it doesn't give me the data that I need. My reports, look like this. I can get information for it, but it doesn't serve us as well as some of the other things that are out there now. So we're looking into a couple additions. We'd still have to keep the IMC, but this would be something where I can track mechanical, training, inspections. This is very difficult to do it with the program we have now.
When you get called out to a house fire, do you have a schematic, like you could get out of the property records, of what that house layout might look like?
Well, what we can do now is, and with help of the IT department and the assessors, is we have tablets now that are in the trucks. So the officer in the truck, en route to a location, can pull up the streets, the cross streets. He can pull up what the house might look like. That takes time. It's difficult. He's got other things that he needs to do also. The tablets has helped as far as inspections, able to do stuff right on the tablet. Once the incident is on, maybe if it's a commercial building, we can look up chemicals and things like that. Our guys get out in the districts, the firefighters get out in the districts, so we know what our neighborhoods look like. We know when we go out to Campbell Road, we're gonna see 2.5-story wood frame structures. When we go out to our industrial building, we know what those buildings are gonna look like. But we're looking to take advantage of everything that's out there in order to give us more knowledge, make the job more effective, more efficient. So that's what we're looking for.
The software that you're getting, because it is a nice bump from the prior year, that helps you with the personnel, the overall management of the?
So one of the programs that we're looking to get this year is called On Duty. That's gonna help us with the personnel on leave. It's also integrated into the Munis system. The way we do our leave now, we're basically using pen and paper. And by getting this system, it's gonna reduce the hours for not only myself, my administrative assistant, Diane. So it's gonna save us hours. Today, what I had to do is do the leave. Every month I have to do that, and I do that in a binder book. So it takes me a little while to do that. Once we have this system, I won't need to do that. It'll free my time up to do things that you know, are more useful for me.
So are you buying a ready-made program, or are you going to be taking out RFPs to build a customized
No,
product?
this will be
for
a
you?
ready program. The police department already uses it.
That's the same thing.
Yeah, so they would
Okay.
come in, there'd be a one-time setup fee for the fire department, and then that price would be reduced, as well as the other fire program that we're looking at. We're looking at two different types of programs. One is called Station Smarts, the other is called Firehouse. We're gonna visit a few other fire departments that use those programs, see what they like about them, what they don't like about them, and then we're gonna make a decision.
I really like Tim's idea, if you could, say if there's any incident somewhere, and you could punch in the address, and it shows the layout of that
Well, that
building.
Firehouse program that we're
It shows the
discussing,
layout
It'll
complete?
it'll give us a lot of that information. It's all gonna be what we put into it.
So where the pipes are, water pipes are, where the gas pipes are.
Well,
it will show.
right now, we have hydrant, so we can go online and we can see where the nearest hydrant is.
No, I mean to say the inside of the building, not the outside, like the gas pipes and stuff.
We won't have that with a residential, and that's mostly what we respond to. We're not gonna get the inside of a home. But what we'll see with this program, we can see where the nearest engine is. We can see what direction they're coming from. So if they're not coming from the station and they're already on the road, you can see if they're supposed to be first into a scene, or they're gonna be second into a scene. So, and again, we haven't looked at these. This is something that we're looking to bring in this year, but we need to see both of the programs. But they will be helpful. And they're gonna give us better data, that, you know, I like to be able to give the Board of Selectmen monthly reports. This is what I give them. I wanna be able to give them something more than just the incidents that we go on, so.
On your capital outlay line here, it looks like that you got significantly less than you had asked for. What was it that you didn't get? or
So what that
were you
was
hoping
is,
for?
that is actually for AEDs. There would be 18 of them that were gonna be for not only the fire department, but town hall, senior center. The town is going to fund those. They were put into my budget, and then it was removed. I didn't remove that, I didn't request those. So it wasn't something that was taken out of me. I
Okay.
did not put that in.
Oh,
Um,
you just have to explain it to somebody,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So the idea was, we actually applied for a grant. We got the grant. It would cost more for us to purchase those with the grant than we could purchase them ourselves. So we're not gonna use the grant. It's cheaper for us to purchase these. So what they're gonna do is, these AEDs are gonna go in locations that currently don't have them. So the fire department worked with the school department, the Board of Health, and they came up with a amount of AEDs that we needed for these locations. So it's town hall, senior center, the library, some of the schools.
They're not in every school.
They are in every school, but there were some other locations that they were looking to get them.
Great.
So we were increasing the locations of them, so.
Oh, that's good. I thought you got kind of burned
No,
there. Didn't
no,
get
no.
what you wanted.
No, and again, I
do that
think,
now.
as what the police chief said, in my 3 years, I think we've been funded fairly well for the equipment that we need. I was actually at the Professional Development Conference, the Fire Chiefs of Mass Conference last week in Worcester, and talking with other chiefs. You know, we do pretty well as far as equipment that we've been, you know, that line item, that operational capital. A lot of communities don't get that. You know, I have to say, you know, like the police chief, that we've been funded pretty well as far as equipment.
Have you hired this trainer yet?
So this position is not the training officer. He's gonna be the EMS coordinator, in addition to EMS training. So we have the deputy fire chief, who's actually the training officer. The EMS coordinator position that I've requested is going to oversee EMS training, but is also gonna be in charge of reporting, matrix reporting. Every 2 weeks, we have to report to the state. Every EMS call now has to be QA/QI. There's ambulance licenses and inspections. There's 65% of what we do is EMS. We didn't have a person in that position full-time. So we currently have an EMS coordinator. It's a $2,000 stipend position. He gets an extra $2,000. One of the stipend positions you would see in the budget. He works on a shift, so we only see him on the days that he's working unless I bring him in on an overtime. EMS, running a BLS ambulance service, what we do, has become a lot to do to that. There's a lot of mandates, protocols that we have to keep up with. So he'll be in charge of all the training, the record-keeping of the training. In 2016, I took my Chief Fire Officer course, and my paper was on the need for an EMS, full-time EMS position. After I graduated from that course, I met with the manager, and I told him this is why I wrote this, and explained the need for this position in the fire department. Other fire departments are doing it, but we're the second in this area. Methuen did theirs last year, but we actually had this on, it was on the radar for a bit.
It was funded in 18, not in 19.
So the question I have then is, do you have someone on the, have you put a application or?
So what it'll be somebody from within. Obviously, there's qualifications, but many of my firefighters can put in for that position. And then I'm gonna be filling with a new firefighter behind that person. So we're gonna increase our staffing by 1.
Yep.
So we have not increased staffing since 1999.
Oh, you got them beat by 2, huh?
Yeah, so, that, in 1999 is when we put the,
Hasn't written any papers about
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Good for you. The first school paper
Yeah.
actually might work.
So in 1999 is when we put the second ambulance on. So that was the last time that the fire department increased their staffing. But again, we're seeing an increase for service of what we do. So,
Any other questions,
Real
Chris?
quick, the Columbia Gas blowing up our town. Did you?
well, yeah, okay.
Sorry, victim here. Impacted.
Yeah.
Did that screw up your budget at all? I mean, is that something that you got? I'm just curious.
No,
Did
it's not
you-
gonna affect our
Not gonna
budget.
affect your budget. Did you get reimbursed? Did you get money back to pay? You must have paid more in overtime.
So we did. So what I did during that incident is from September 13th through the end of December, I had extra staffing on. During the restoration, we had a lot of road closures. When I met with Columbia Gas, we went over road closures, and there was no guarantee that my apparatus was gonna get in without me putting extra people on to check the areas. So I had extra staff on, and I ran an extra engine during that time, because I didn't want our engines going out to a normal call, and then somebody calling from the impacted area, not getting immediate response from the fire department. So we put that on. There was an account set up it did not take out of my overtime budget.
So it tracked the expense.
Right. Right.
So the initial, when the incident happened on the 13th, that following Monday when I came in, I set up accounts in every single budget
Yeah.
for specific to gas.
Yeah.
we-
So you were able to track it.
So I tracked it specifically
Yeah.
by itself, any costs were associated with each.
You guys are everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
you were
So-
everywhere.
go ahead, Jeff.
Well, what of that was reimbursed to her question? I mean, there's a lot, it sounds like a lot of extra expenditures.
Had to.
Right,
We're working on
And
that.
yeah,
we're working on the reimbursement.
Right.
I didn't think it had.
Yeah.
Yep.
happened fully. Okay.
right.
But we're not anticipating some sort of a windfall or any kind
I
of,
don't
this is
know the
just repayment
specifics
for
right
what
now.
we've already
Yeah.
It's
done.
not
Okay.
Pretty much
Yeah.
what's happening so far.
Yeah, we don't know anything right now, we're working on it.
Okay.
It's as much as we can say.
And again, thank you for your service.
Yeah, there have been many people, including people at this table, who've been impacted and it's been serviced by you and your group, and I've got nothing but praise for you, Chief Gray. This has been a great town, so.
No, I know. Again, I'm very proud of how the fire department, police department, but it went well beyond that. It was Public Works Department, the building inspectors and his whole group. The town manager involved everybody, and this went on until the restoration was complete in middle of December. I still meet regularly with Columbia Gas. We have seen an increase in calls that were going on, but that's based on Columbia Gas is now calling us on the calls that they used to get. You might have heard about that. So if Columbia Gas gets a call from the public for an odor of gas or a gas leak, they notify us. If we get one, we've always notified them. So it's not something that we're not handling, but there has been an increase of those calls. And we expect to have those for a little longer.
And are those billable? Can you bill those back to Columbia Gas as well?
No, it's just an incident that we go on. It's not something that,
Is it something that probably was happening or not
right.
happening enough?
I
in
mean,
the
we
past?
always went on gas incident calls, and still, a lot of these calls are coming from the non-impacted area. You know,
The panicking.
It's fear.
right.
Well,
Right.
it's just interesting because we see a lot of like public posts, especially, impacted area, Facebook groups and stuff, they see Columbia Gas truck and a fire truck and they immediately, there's a gas leak. So I was just curious, if those are actually gas leaks or if that's people just fearful and concerned, so.
Some are leaks, and again, prior to September 13th, we went on these same type of calls.
I see.
We're just getting, there's a better working relationship. We're being notified when we weren't being notified before, so,
Good.
so we're staying on that.
Good.
I have a non-financial comment.
Sure.
And a praise. Somehow a tape of the fire dispatch during the September 13th problem got out on the internet, and I listened to many hours of it. It's remarkable how professional and how amazing your people were during this time when 80 structures, I don't think there's any way to train for this kind of event, and the people were totally calm. They were very coordinated, and it was very impressive. And
Thank you.
it was, thank God those people had their head together.
No, I think everybody involved did a great job, and I will pass that on to my department as well. The dispatchers were fantastic, so.
Maybe 1 hour
Yeah.
I listened to.
Just pulling that back a
It's
little.
great
as your
background.
record.
It's great background information.
Stressful to listen to.
Thank you.
It's
Okay,
amazing.
thank you.
It's incredible.
Okay.
It's like listening to 9/11 tape.
Yeah.
We're like, what's
This
going
is
on?
the
I don't know.
goals and prior year accomplishments for emergency management that got omitted from the book, so this is 3 pages, and 1 page each.
Mr. Manager Jeff Coco, please, come forward.
Certainly. Of course. Thank you.
With the title of emergency management, you think that you have a lot of senior people reporting to you directly, but I'm kind of curious about what your function is and what's happening in your
I'll give you
world.
I'll give you the canned response if you like.
Sure. Look, he's all prepared with his little notes there.
Actually, not yet, but, we are the third branch of public safety, and we are not a department, we are an agency. The reason being is that we answer to multiple entities, not just the municipality, but we also answer to the state and federal government. We're the liaison between the three. When the resources exceed those of our community, we are the conduit to be able to bring those additional resources in. That's what we do. We're also responsible for the funding that you were just talking about, reimbursement process that comes back to our community, providing that we qualify. That's usually in the case of a state of emergency has been declared, as it was during the gas emergency. And as Lynn knows all too well, that almost a year ago, the March 3rd and 13th storms that we had, We're in the reimbursement process of that right now, trying to recover that money, which is going to be approximately, what, $230,000? Of that, 75% will come from the federal entity. The additional 25% is the responsibility of our state, which we never see, but we're glad to get back that 75%.
Sure.
We are basically a volunteer agency. I am stipend, as you know. The rest of our personnel are volunteers, and it's.
How many volunteers, Jeff?
We're currently up around 20 right now. We have 4 new individuals who just came on. One of them is a position that we haven't previously had. It's called a CERT, which is a Citizens Response Team. And this individual is hopeful to get one activated in our community. We haven't had much luck with it in the past, but she's very gung-ho on this, and hopefully she can make some progress with it. So it'd be a new entity that would exist.
Do all your volunteers have specific positions that they?
They do,
Okay.
they do. It breaks down into, the way theoretically it could be broken down is that we have theoretically auxiliary police, which we no longer have. When the police department went for accreditation, you could either be, all of our officers were either special officers / auxiliary, which means they had full police power, they carried a sidearm, had the power of arrest, etc. Under accreditation, you could not be paid and be volunteer simultaneously. So we split that off. All of our auxiliary officers became reserve or special officers under the police department, and so that entity kind of went away. We could also, which we've never have an auxiliary fire department, which has never existed in North Andover. Then you get into the main branch, which is the operations, which under that falls communications as well, communications division and operations. And operations has the bulk of our entity. Our communications division are all basically ham operators, are all licensed ham operators under RACES. And the rest of us are just basically trained to respond, et cetera. And we go through a lot of training to qualify.
That's the next question. I have these 20 volunteers. How do you gel them?
Well, number one, when somebody wants to become a volunteer, I try and really get real specific with them to let them know that, we're the ones who are going in when everybody else wants to go out. When it's a bad storm,
Yep.
a lot of people want to hunker down with their family. We're the ones who are going out the door to go help people. If it's a hurricane, if we're supporting a major fire, the gas disaster, anything along those lines, you have to have the mindset that, you have to have an understanding family as well, that you're going to be going out and assisting the public, your community, during this event, that, you're not going to be home taking care of, and that's one of the major mindsets there. Then over and above that, we have a myriad of training. We have to have all of our ICS training, incident command, all of that. Everybody has to be up to speed on that to know how the structure works. And then there's several different modules, everything from large animal rescue, which we have pet sheltering, shelter management courses that we have to take, such as which we ran at the high school during the gas disaster. All of these things, you have to have the prerequisites or take the courses in order to qualify for it. It isn't like you just come in off the street and say, you're going to go do this,
How much time does it take to get qualified to become a volunteer?
Depends on what you're doing. Everybody can serve a purpose, whether it's something from an administrative standpoint down to actually boots on the ground. Some of the courses you can take in less than a week. Some of them take multiple weeks over different days. Other ones are basically going online and taking a FEMA course, things along those lines.
So I'm not seeing much in the training budget.
We don't really require it because there isn't a lot of cost for us from a budgetary standpoint. Most of it's provided by the federal government at no cost to us.
Okay.
So that's a big advantage there. Every now and then there may be a small thing such as book fees, et cetera. That's why we keep a small reserve in there for that. But 99% of it, they realize that it's basically volunteers, so they basically cover the cost for us.
I really would like to salute you all. This is something great that you people are doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
What about the radio and transmitter budget? It was reduced. Is there not as much need or an expense, or is this allocated to a different budget, or?
At the moment, we've been, in fact, if you look at my goals, et cetera, that we've been doing a multi-year build-out. And in fact, poor Lynn is, Lynn's ready to pull her hair out with me all the time. But many times we'll be purchasing a piece of
You don't
equipment.
have any more hair to be pulled out.
He's making mine go crazy.
Oh, whoa. Many times, what we'll do is we'll look at a particular project and say, this is what we require from a communication standpoint. It could be a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 build-out. So we'll break it down into modules. My senior operations officer is very good at this. He handles a lot of our public safety communications equipment. You know, say like this last go-around, we bought 2 repeaters that we needed, part of the build-out. Standing alone, they do nothing, but part of the overall package, they are critical infrastructure to allow radios to transmit and talk to each other versus doing simplex, which is just radio to radio, things along those lines. So right now, we're relatively good in that. We have some additional purchases that have to be made for the build-out. I was just talking with our finance director / town manager a couple of days ago about a couple of radios that we'd like to purchase that we have in the past. We have currently 2. They're called tri-band radios. No other department from public safety in our community currently has them. But it gives us the ability to communicate across all different spectrums during an event, such as where the DPW is operating on the VHF, and police and fire are UHF, state police are on the 800. These radios that we carry can talk to all of them. It was instrumental during the gas disaster. We actually set up our mobile EOC in St. Michael's parking lot and used it there where we had all these different entities converging there. And we actually put a firefighter in there to actually handle the communications because we had all these different apparatus coming in from all over the region who were using different radio frequencies. Now we had the means to be able to talk to each other.
Is that standard for departments to have all different?
No.
That's unique to North Andover?
It's unique to us. We are unique in many ways.
And so, we've just spent a lot of money on radios?
We do, yeah.
Is that something that we should, like, that you've evaluated and we're sticking with the current radios for each? I mean, obviously you've evaluated it, but
Right,
sticking
each
with each
department.
department, but it was, are we doing ourselves a disservice by not moving to something that is more versatile, or is that, I don't know.
Well, let me give you the breakdown. For example, normally the police department, they have the ability now, they have dual band, I believe, and I think the fire department does as well, where they can listen in to 2 entities at once. But we have a greater capability. We can grab the whole spectrum. Is there a need for that normally on a fire scene? No. Is there a need for that normally on a police issue? No.
Just in an emergency.
It's good to have that capability every now and then, but do they need it all the time? It isn't really. Where we're more omniscient, more encompassing, it's better for us, it's critical for us that we, once again, we are a resource to the other entities, such as the gas disaster, when we can bring in, and now they have the capability to make their lives a lot easier. And these particular radios, they start for the portable radio, which is the one you carry, they start around $7,000 for each radio. And then you have to put,
And
Yeah.
that's why each department doesn't have them.
right, exactly,
But all
exactly.
the other departments, the radios that they do have are just as expensive.
Right.
And last year,
I see.
we purchased radios for the police department. This year, in the fire department, for FY19, there's, FY20, there's the capital for radios for the fire department.
And the fire department and police department's radios can talk?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
They are basically one.
Can they talk to DPW too?
I don't know.
No, I
about
don't
that.
think so.
I don't think
No.
so.
Just curious.
Yeah.
They're basically one step below our radios in the, the capability that they have.
I see.
Right, and we phase,
Can you lease those equipments?
Yeah, you can. That's one thing that's good about these is, you heard me say, it starts at $7,000, and then there are modules, programmable modules that can go into them, so they can be upgraded, which is an advantage. They don't become obsolete. That has happened to communications and public safety in the past, where the technology changes. When we
Right.
went from, when we went to the digital spectrum, Now, all the old radios from public safety became obsolete, because now you had to have this narrow band spectrum in there. So they had to upgrade for that. But now we're basically on an even keel, and the technology has changed to the point where you can plug in a module to it to upgrade it.
And unfortunately, as you know, as technology changes so drastically
Yes, exactly.
anyway,
Yeah.
that's why the fire and the police, their radios, they have a rolling plan to replace as they go along, as the technology improves, because, I mean,
You have to.
you know,
Yes.
you buy a piece of technology today, could be no good tomorrow,
Tomorrow, yeah, 1 year later.
because it's advancing so fast.
Right. And are you having the same issues, or I don't even know,
Oh.
fire's having the same issues as the police? So Chief Gray had mentioned about the fiber
Yep.
network and where it extends.
Yeah.
Is that something that all departments are having difficulty with?
We
or-
can have Chris McClaw speak to that on the next visit here, because he's more up to speed on that, because he works more closely with the departments. I don't want to speak to something that I don't know the full details on, but we can discuss that in more detail, which would be a good segue into IT when he comes in.
I noticed one of your accomplishments this past year was bringing the garage and the storage at Stevens up to speed.
Yeah.
How does the new plan for Stevens Estate affect your ability to store your equipment? Does the RFP
don't-
deal
yeah.
with that?
We'll have to
And-
deal with that
Yeah.
at that time.
Okay, so there's a big question mark there in terms of,
So Jeff, I understand there's a facility that's gonna be available sometime after the senior center is,
We hope. Been down this,
is completed.
this is my 41st year with the town,
God bless you.
and I've heard this many times.
We'll leave that
I'm a patient
decision
man.
up to the new town manager.
Well, start influencing the finance committee, it'll see if it can help you there.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jeff? Hey, thank you for your service. Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
dip-
My pleasure.
And obviously, you love what you're doing, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I apologize. This is where I like to say, now it's Sanford and Sons.
Oh, jeez. Nice.
But
Do you want Tim up here?
I I did it last year, and it just was like, it's just a good.
he's here all week, try the
Get
wheel.
that. I get
No
that, Jeff.
offense taken, right?
None whatsoever.
Hey, welcome, appreciate you. This is kind of late hour, but
No.
there's significant parts of our budget, yours being a large part of it, the public safety being the other, including emergency management. So I appreciate you being here to tell us all about how you're keeping our infrastructure up to speed and how you're keeping our water and sewer rates the same 8 years in a row.
Being here for 2 years, I can't take a lot of credit for that. I would like to just recognize, behind the Stand the Public, I actually have the managers of my department.
Yep.
Glenn Alt, he's in charge of water treatment. I have Tim Millette, who's the operations manager, and then I have John Bergese, Assistant Director, Town Engineer. They're responsible for a lot of the benefits that we have in here.
Okay.
With the rates, I think I'm certainly benefiting from decisions made in the past. They kept control of their infrastructure. They made improvements when they needed to. In one of the things with this gas emergency, dealing with the other communities, the surrounding communities, I find how our water system, both on the treatment side and just in the maintenance, we're well above some of these surrounding communities. And that's not to say that we're not gonna have problems. I mean, we have breaks, we do have some older mains, we have some older sewer mains, but a lot of that is just, it's due to the upkeep that they've done over the years. So there aren't great surprises, and that certainly leads to just the stability in the rates.
Okay. Yeah, good maintenance, I agree. So thank you. Good things that happened this last year?
Well, we had some unexpected things. We had certainly a lot of weather events with blizzards, the windstorms, as Jeff had mentioned. Those really impacted, there are a couple day events, but they impact us a lot longer, especially with the brush cutting and the tree damage that was done. In fact, we haven't recovered. You'll see within my budget in our streets and sidewalks, I've added $20,000 to have some contracted maintenance of the trees. Just, we were overwhelmed. We have one bucket truck, and so those events, it's, again, people were out of power for a week. It was a very difficult time, as you all know. We were picking up brush in trees for the entire year. So that was one of the unexpected. Again, the gas company, the emergency that went on, we were a support role during the emergency, but then afterwards, we had a lead role in getting the restoration on the street-ready side. That was a coordinated effort. Everyone in my department was involved in it. It was daily. We talk about the expenses that Lynn has tracked, and every department incurred expenses. It was more the time aspect of it, marking out our water mains. I mean, they were digging, sometimes they had 40 and 50 crews in town at a time. And we were running around marking out, making sure that they're not hitting our water and our sewer infrastructure and our drainage infrastructure. So I think that was unexpected, and we learned a lot. I mean, something that I've never seen in my 28 years. A lot of residents obviously never experienced that, and hopefully will never experience that again. We had some, took part in a lot of great activities. We just finished up the LED conversion of our streetlights. Great technology now. It's cost effective. And it was grant funded. So we've been.
Can't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Lights are good.
Yeah, it is. And brighter, it adds to safety. It's a great technology. We've had some other grants that we've been working on with the MassWorks grant over on 125 in front of 1210 Osgood by Barker Farm. They're going to be installing sidewalks. Sidewalks is a big priority in the Board of Selectmen, and it's reflected in our budget. We received a grant last year to do a sidewalk inventory. There's a committee formed on looking at connectivity in town, which is a high priority. When they were doing the master plan, that's how do we connect the schools? How do we connect these neighborhoods? So that plan will be developed. We do have some increases both in our Chapter 90 to help with getting some upgrades in sidewalks. And so we finished, along those lines, we finished the High Water Elm project, which added sidewalks, major improvement to that mill area. It was a challenging project for sure. And that's that's led to, within my budget, we have a project manager / engineer position. One of the things that we found is that we're geared towards maintenance. These major improvements, we're just not set up to do the communication with the public and the business and all the permitting and everything else that goes into some of these complex projects. And, we had gas, we had electric, we had underground mains for water, sewer. And so it was challenging from the standpoint of just meeting all the ADA regulations, and because you've got all these constraints working up against mill buildings that have been there for a few hundred years.
Could you tell us a little bit about that position and kind of your role in projects throughout the community, both on the municipal and the school side, and how that works, and then if this new position will assist in that, or in what kind of specific role they'll have and what role they won't fill?
Okay. Certainly everyone in my department gets involved in a multitude of projects, even outside of the public works realm. Right now, I'm on the senior center committee. John Bergese spent most of the summer with the kindergarten project, as far as coordinating the parking lot, the traffic maintenance. A lot of times he was actually out there directing traffic when they were with the school kids, with the buses and whatnot. So we get involved in a lot of those projects. And then like the LED project, where our role really goes in from planning through design through construction of it. One of the things that we've done over the years as a department, we have to hire an awful lot of consultants. Consultants are very expensive. We need it for the expertise. We're not gonna get away from that by having this position. But one of the things that we found with the High Water Elm project is that it takes our time to go out and make design changes and decisions, and one thing impacts another. So this position has to have knowledge in all forms of construction, so that it'll speed up construction when you're out in the field. You have somebody out in the field who can make a decision, not just an inspector, not just having to call the contractor or the consultant in and say, okay, that's okay to make that decision, move a catch basin, do some drainage design, do some other improvement. We get involved in permitting a lot of projects. So we have, for instance, we permitted a boat ramp for the fire department. And it really takes the resources. We have a lot of expertise with everybody in the back there, but they don't have the time to go through on some of these major projects, and the involvement, the coordination effort. I can tell you, a couple of DOT projects that are going on. We have the 125 in Mass Ave improvements. Major project. It's a state project, but it takes our time to coordinate to make sure that the towns, our requirements are being met and our needs are being met. So the position will be out in the field on a daily basis during the construction season, and we expect that person to be on the job, out on these projects on a daily basis. Whereas we didn't really have that. High Water Elm was a good example. As far as between John, Tim, myself, our construction inspector in-house, we all were taking turns of going out there on a daily basis. And it probably led to a little bit of confusion with the residents and the business, in that there wasn't that consistent face. And I do think for projects to be successful, you need one person assigned to them.
So what about that was really helpful, thank you. What about with a larger, and that was a sizable project, but like the kindergarten, for example, where does your scope end? I guess, we have the senior center coming up, there's the facilities master plan that's looking at renovations to a lot of elementary schools. I think everyone's well aware that we have a middle school something on the horizon. So, where does the scope end, and then what does the town need in addition to that, to be successful?
I can tell you, having done this for a while, we will get involved as much as we can in any type of project. The middle school field is probably a very good example. You've got outside groups who are adding input, and you've got a lot of coordinated effort. We have some expertise with construction and solving some of the problems that will occur. We were having a discussion today about, superintendent has raised some concerns about just traffic and constructability. How do you do that during the school? We have some experience in that. We'll get involved in as far as we can. As far as the senior center, I expect to be through that from start all the way till the ribbon cutting, quite frankly. We'll have a clerk of the works out there, but there isn't any project that you can just give to a consultant and say, run with it. I mean, you need the in-house expertise. You need the person coordinating with the community and the various departments. Another example today, with getting the other departments involved, knowing that you need to have the fire department. Fire department needs to be looking at the senior center to make sure that they have access and, what happens, so there's a lot to it. So this person will be that one.
And is that enough? I mean, right now it is, but
Yeah, right
going
now it
forward, is that something you see as cost effective to bring in-house instead of, having a large project and hiring, a construction rep or having to do that again?
You're not gonna get away from the construction clerk of the works, because those are
I
state
understand.
requirements.
Yep.
I think it's enough for we've got some major projects planned going forward, so I do think this is a valuable position
Thank
that's
you.
needed.
Is this position going to be responsible for coordinating the other departments as well? And I think about the the kindergarten building, and
And
where
Bryant Street.
all of a sudden it came up as we forgot, or we didn't involve this department. and it's now cost us, I don't know if it's cost us additional because of after the fact.
Right,
Or-
finding out the different things after
Yeah,
the fact.
and so
Yep.
the question is, will this project position be responsible for saying, I need to pull in all you departments, I want every one of you to sign off on this thing, because I don't want to have an spit
Right.
after it's done, sort of.
I want to get away a little bit from the building projects, because it was really more related to road projects and those sort of things.
Okay,
So it really depends, it'll depend on some of the expertise of the person coming in. And again, it'll be on the direction of the town manager, what is needed for each one of these projects. I think as every project goes through, we're learning, okay, here's a better way of doing it.
so this is the position the town manager could call upon, it's not necessarily a road project, but it's a substantial project, such as the early kindergarten school.
Yeah, no,
I know, there's a lot.
we spent a lot of time out there.
ECC or EAC, whatever.
Yeah.
But that, and you have the elementary schools coming up, you have a potential middle school on the horizon, and you want to make sure that there's a point person besides the person in charge of construction,
Yep.
who's got the town's departments, ears and eyes involved.
Right, and I think, and it's gonna be on a case-by-case basis, definitely. But as Jim said, the position is to gear around the roads. As you know, we're gonna be working on the roads for several years now to fix what happened with Columbia Gas. And that's gonna be a huge, 4-year, 3-year?
Right now, we're looking at a 4-year plan, in addition to the,
Regular.
$1.2 million worth of road work that we do.
Yep.
Right,
So the focus is things that are within your department's scope, and then in addition, leveraging that person's expertise for other projects,
yes,
but not
as
being the
needed.
core person responsible for those projects.
Absolutely.
Helpful.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
It seemed that your department jumped in there, and the assistant town manager left, assisted with the coordination of the construction of the new Atkinson playground.
We've all, well, at least since I've been here, I've done Drummond, we've done, it's just something that we're involved in, anything with fields, and, we're looking at having to redo Grogan's Field, again, because of the gas company, that's where the temporary shelters were. So there are no shortage of projects coming up, that's for sure.
thank you, Columbia Gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So on the administration budget, I assume that the increase in the pay there is for that position?
That's the primary, yes.
And is that position gonna be done from in-house, or are you going outside to find somebody?
We expect to have to go outside.
Okay. And when do you think that might happen?
It won't be funded till July, so, we'll start the recruiting after it's all approved, and, the sooner we can get that person in there, again, projects are gonna be,
Right, and I mean, I think once town meeting, if it's approved at town meeting, I mean, he can start the process, they just can't have the hire date
Hire.
until July 1st.
Okay.
Yep. If he wants to be a little proactive and have that geared up for
You
the
got a lot
person
on
to
your platter,
start.
yeah.
Yep.
One question about the expense for a tree
Restoration.
but also management, right, of the existing issues. You said that you added some additional money to
I-
outsource that.
yes, there was $20,000 in the, streets and sidewalks.
Is that enough? I
Um,
know we're working with it, but
Yes.
there always could be more, right? I understand that, but
We have a backlog. We have a backlog right
Yeah.
now. It's a struggle. Again, it's just like winter. You didn't think that it was that bad of a winter so far, but with all the icing events, we're almost through the entire budget. We joke that, we can't be having these windstorms the way we've had. It just can't continue. It just can't continue. Again, for what I think our current backlog is, it's sufficient.
it will get you up to speed.
It's gonna get us better than where we've been. With the one, and we're very fortunate, having been in a number of other towns, this is my 5th community I've worked for. We're fortunate to have a bucket truck and some expertise on trees. It's something that, it's a primary safety function that we do with the amount of limbs and just going out and checking, and so we have a lot of expertise in-house, but it's it's a very time-consuming. I mean, it's a four-man crew when you go out to take down a branch. So the 20,000 will get us, and we contract out quite a bit now as it is. So this is just gonna help us attack that backlog.
And is that going to get us in a position where, next winter, hopefully we're not seeing so many downlimbs? I know you can't, the weather is the weather, but is
Yeah.
this to cover, I guess my question is this to cover if there is a significant winter event and then you have downlimbs or things that are hanging and then you have to address them? Or is this a proactive approach to deal with them in non-winter months so that we can lessen the impact in winter months?
Yeah, it'll be the entire year through.
Okay.
It's, I believe it's proactive, but it's hard to say that with the backlog that we have.
Understood.
It's just, there's no shortage of tree limbs. We have a number of trees. Again, one of the things we're gonna be, in our program, we are gonna be planting more trees. We're gonna be a little more selective of the type of trees we use and, so that hopefully we're not adding significant maintenance onto the future. However, adding trees to beautify the communities, it's an important aspect of what we do.
Thank you.
Lynn, this is more of a you type question. Sure. Both in the Public Works other funding and in the Police Department other funding. Negative balances in the case of the Public Works, it's chapter 90 of a minus 119,000. What's that mean?
Well, that's a reimbursement. So the way Chapter 90 works is they do the construction, and on a quarterly basis, they submit for reimbursement. So it's a timing issue. So we've gotten on the regular routine on a quarterly basis that the administrative staff over at DPW put together the reimbursement request, and then the state reimburses us, which puts that back into the positive.
Okay.
Yep.
And Jim, a question for you, and if I've crossed the bar of the barrier here, and you'll know why I'm asking the question, but it has nothing to do with me. What is the National Grid stake relative to the trees that are dead in all of our areas that will come down upon the trees? And I just need the general town kind of response. I don't know.
I'd like to say we work really well with National Grid when we have events, and they're generally they're responsive to our request. However, they're only responsible for on top of their wires. They're not responsible for stumps or anything like that. So they drop the tree below their wires and they walk away. A lot of times they leave the stump, they leave the branches there. So it's, I think I can say over the years, I've seen the utility companies doing a better job understanding that these trees are hazards to their infrastructure. It was a big topic during the wind event where I can tell you they claimed in certain instances that some of the infrastructure, some of the failures they had were because of they weren't allowed to cut trees in railroad right-of-ways. I mean, so it's really a double-edged sword because you don't want to see clear cutting of trees, but you do want to see them maintained so that we're not getting these trees down, knocking out power to residents. It's really, and I think they know that, and I think they do a better job than they have in the past. I won't say that it's adequate at this point, and from our perspective, there are plenty of times where a resident will call us and say, there's a tree limb. I'm concerned about this tree limb. We'll go out, take a look at it and say, yeah, it's probably something the utility company, we can't touch it because it's in the wires of, so we can't touch any tree that's in the wires. And trying to get them to get out there and even look at it, sometimes it's a struggle. I will say, I know the police and fire they're generally very helpful in that regards, where they'll make the contact and they'll get a much better response. But it's an expense to them. It's a straight expense to the utilities, so.
I have a question.
With advancements being made in different fields and departments, has there been any plan to put the wires underground lay them underground?
Great question. We actually, several years ago, they did over by the old town common. And it's actually a surcharge on every resident's electric bill. And the next phase of that will underground Main Street, essentially from Sutton Street up to Water Street. So that is, that'll be coming. John Bergese, Assistant Director, has actually started coordinating that project. It's probably a 5 to 10-year project. It's, again, the electric can recover. It's more, I think, the other utilities that a little more challenging, trying to get them on board, but John's doing a great job getting that project underway.
So is that, there's a plan for the entire town?
Not the entire town. And again, so that surcharge was based on the expense to do these 2 small
Just
areas. I can tell you, working for another community that underground the entire town, but that's because they had their own municipal light plant. It was well over $1 million a mile, well over to underground, and that was 20 years ago. So the expense,
How long before the debt to National Grid, I believe that's the common, is paid off on the old common?
The surcharge?
Yeah.
I'm not sure of when that runs out.
I think the next, I think it's already been, that one has already been paid off.
Okay.
And
I just
now
wanna
the
make sure
surcharge,
who's watching the.
yeah, the surcharge is for the next phase. that
Which
will-
is Main Street.
Yeah.
Okay. You seem to be happy with water and sewer?
Yeah, I think, again, we're gonna have some challenges. I think one of the things I probably should have mentioned is increased regulations. I may have mentioned this last year. Right now, I mean, we have permits for everything, but right now, I&I, which is inflow and infiltration, water getting into the sewer system, we had to do a management plan, so we have some challenges ahead. When you have, I guess, an open system clay line, clay pipes, a lot of infiltration gets in, and so EPA and DEP, the State Department of Environmental Protection, are trying to get communities to get that flow out of there. And so we've got some challenges ahead. We do have, with this gas, with the restoration of the roadways, we're really looking at our water mains and our sewer mains and our drain to see what upgrades we'll need to make if we're gonna be upgrading the roadways. I think overall, I mentioned we're in a very good shape, especially with the treatment plant, and I believe most of our water mains are either new or the old mains are lined, asphalt lines. I'd love to replace them all to upgrade a ductile iron, but that's gonna be a much longer project over many years.
In terms of additional costs up the road, do you foresee any expenses related to increased discussion over releasing wastewater into the Merrimack River?
GLS, I sit on the GLS board. I'm the town rep to that. I can tell you that, again, with environmental regulations changing, and we see it on the drainage side in town with the NIPD's permit, there are gonna be stricter regulations moving forward. It's just been a progression. I think, communities, we want clean water. So it's, yeah, there'll definitely be some challenges.
And are we prepared for that? I mean,
Well, right now.
or we don't know what to be prepared
We don't
for
know
yet?
what, well, we know that costs will increase. I mean, I can tell you, sitting on the board, the discussion is that it's a very, it's a very lean budget that GLSD operates on. And so I think the next phases in the future of what type of contaminants are we gonna have to treat for? Phosphorus and various things that will increase treatment. We see it even on the water side. We've been very fortunate to have the plant that we have. We removed the North Pump Station this past year. We're gonna be doing pre-treatment with ozone. Yeah, so, yeah, I think they'll, I can't say what the dollar amount will be, but there'll definitely be some increases.
Is that like a 2-year thing, you think, or in the next 5 years, next 10? I know you don't know exactly, but
I-
do you foresee it being sooner rather than later?
I
or-
think sooner we will start seeing
Seeing a
some
bigger
increases, increases. Right now, one of the discussions is we do get credit back to the communities. Again, if they don't spend everything, there's been a push to reduce those credits every year. And because of some of the expenses, like generation for emergency generation and those sort of things.
And the thought of reducing the credit back to the communities would be to put that additional funding aside, which would help with the capital improvements at the GLSD. I mean, we had a 3% increase this year, so we don't know what it will be. It'll probably be at 3%, if not more, each year increasing.
Understood.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Good job.
Thank you.
Great
Appreciate
job.
it.
And
Thank you.
appreciate the direction you're taking and your project oversight, management, all that, so thank you. I'm going to change the order of one item here. Our next, just the reason why I'm doing it is just for our public attendee. But the rest of the items that we need to discuss, the brief discussion on the capital improvement plan, I'll say it right now. We're going to be voting on the capital improvement plan along with the regular operating budget all at one time. So that's what's gonna happen there. Remaining calendar and plans, the next 2 weeks are going, thank you guys, so appreciate it. The next two meetings, the next 2 weeks will be meeting, and my intention is to have the IT, facilities, Lynn, and the planning budgets up for review. In the case of Lynn, there's some questions that she's got an answer to everything. Fixed costs, just brief comments, I am sort of staying in order here, brief comments from Liz at all on the fixed cost?
We had our final, the fixed cost portion of our revenue and fixed costs committee meetings. And, no giant surprises, but, again, as we've all seen, the trend for things such as benefits, insurance, retirement, those fixed costs are just continually rising, as we know. Retirement was up 9.6% this year. So that's, with revenues growing only 3.5 to 4%. We know that Lynn manages a lot of that with being very conservative in how she spends any savings we might find or any additional revenues that come in. We don't immediately sink those into bigger budgets, which is a wise way to approach this. But the question is, how long can we keep paddling that little boat? I mean, that's it's not a surprise, but it is what it is. One of the other things we discussed was the concept of putting aside the net present value of the retirement or the OPEB contribution for new hires, which Andrew did for the 2 municipal side employees that are being added to the budget this go around. But that didn't happen for the people on the school side. We're, adding five FTEs. So that's not happening there. So we're approaching fixing this problem, and that's a wonderful idea. I think the net present value, again, at least we're not adding to the problem, but until we can do something like that consistently for all our FTEs, we're adding to the problem. We're just not adding to it quite as much as we may have been in the past. So,
Quick question. In terms of doing that, it was only done for 2 employees, but we did replace people in the fire department. Am I? No, that was last.
that's one of the full-time employees.
That was last year that some people retired and they replaced them when they were.
So we're moving forward from 2020 forward with this approach of
The net
funding
present
the
value.
new
Yeah.
FTEs that we're adding.
Okay.
Yep. So last year, we didn't do that. And yes, we had some retirements and we replaced them with new firefighters.
but we didn't account for
No,
any.
count for
No.
the for the OPEB.
That's
Okay.
a
at
new
that
thing
point.
in 2020.
2020, and then
And it's only on the municipal side that
and
they've done
is
it.
there just wasn't enough funds to do that on the school side this for
Um,
2020, or we
Yeah.
wouldn't have gotten what we needed essentially.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, $60,000
Mm-hmm.
per employee for the net present value times
Right.
5 employees, that's, that's a big chunk of change.
No, it was
Yeah.
only on the municipal
On the
side.
municipal side, those two
Right.
employees.
Is there a way to? I mean, I guess actually I'm moving ahead because I'm sure the OPEB committee is addressing that. But from a financial standpoint, is it easier to make changes to FTEs, especially if we need a lot front loaded, for example, in the schools to fill classrooms or something of that nature? Is it easier to spread that out? So instead of saying, okay, you have to do 100% of that liability in year one, could you do
Over
30%
5 years
or
or-
whatever it
yeah.
is, right? And allocate it, spread it out so it's more achievable?
I guess you could, as long as you don't look into the future and say, okay, well, this year we're adding 5, but next year we're gonna add another 5. So then it's a rolling effect, so you're not really, because you'll never catch up.
Your tail.
So if you're taking the first 5 that they added this year and you say, okay, I'm gonna fund, 20% or 30% this year, 30% next year, but then if each year you're continuing to add FTEs, which we hope we're not, but it's inevitable, I'm guessing, at some point.
Right.
You'll never catch up.
Canada, I really do think with all this, it's down the road,
Yep.
but we can't not look down the road, that there's gonna be a squeeze.
Right,
So $300,000 should have been, or could have been, or might have been put aside for the 5 new hires for the teachers, but
Yep.
that's equivalent to 3 teachers at least,
right.
and therefore it would have been 2 hires. It's one of those iterative kind of issues.
Right.
So, yep,
Yeah, the goal is to get to that point where, yes, and each year if we're adding FTEs, we're gonna build it into the operating budget so each department is responsible for covering. If you want an FTE, then you need to find it within your other expense line items to cover that, upload that, OPEB cost.
Right, which I definitely
Yeah.
understand
And
on the
to-
municipal side. It's
But
just
on the
really
school
hard
side- on the
when you
school
think
side.
about the repercussions
On the school side.
because it's very
Exactly
it's very
what Tim
different
said.
and tangible, right?
Yes,
So-
it is.
cost is cost.
Cost, right.
Except for if your kids that group of students that
Right.
doesn't have
Right, so
adequate
Teachers.
I mean that's a little bit different than
It is,
trying to
absolutely. And
be lean in your municipal budget, but
so that's why we're gonna look in the OPEB committee, hopefully, because I am on that committee as well.
yeah.
We're meeting next week, and we're gonna start approaching other alternative routes in order to help fund the OPEB.
Yeah, and maybe- and
other
maybe-
ideas as well.
Right, and maybe 5 years isn't achievable because the
Right.
rolling's too far out. Maybe
Right.
it's 2 years or a year is
Right.
the only way we make it work. I don't know.
Or we decide
So-
that maybe the departments can't fund the whole, cost, and maybe we say, okay, we'll start out with maybe the departments have to fund 30% of it.
Right.
And then, have a progression and say the other percentage will come from excess surplus from the insurance appropriation or
Whatever
other
it is.
alternatives to help fund it 100% in that year, but from different
Till we
funding
get to a
sources.
point where it's sustainable.
Right, exactly.
Be fun. The OPEB meeting is at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, March 12th.
Yes,
So if you guys all wanna come,
it's there.
the OPEB meeting is on Tuesday.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to come, Stan.
Where is it?
It's to be held at the
Town
town hall
hall.
at 7 PM.
Is that something you came up with, or is this?
This is the board that put this committee together.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
The idea about pre-funding, is that other
It was an
towns?
idea that, I don't know of any, I personally don't know of any other town that's doing this in this manner.
It's pretty unique.
Um,
I'm wondering how long we will do it.
Right, and how long we can sustain it. Right.
Because, now we have all right, we kind of got
I think
the
we're,
120,000 kind of, we just
Well,
had it.
we've been funding anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 anyway for the last few years in the operating budget.
Right.
And on top of putting additional funding in there. I think it's
It's an eye
it's-
opener.
right. I think we tend to be the trendsetter with new initiatives and new ideas and thinking outside the box. We were fortunate to have a town manager that had those abilities. And,
He's the controller now.
And now we have state
yeah, for the
State
state.
of,
So hopefully he'll do
so
this
we'll
for the
see.
state.
He's gonna say, pay up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
there you go. Thank you for that. We'll see
Okay.
you in 2 weeks, this next meeting.
Yep.
And with that, we open up the
Perfect.
floor to any public comment.
Dan?
Stan, please.
I just wanted to, Stanley Bird, 45 Stone Cleve Road. I just want to add a comment about this particular subject. One of the problems that I had when I was on the school committee was the school committee always used for budgeting for new hires kind of an unrealistic number. They had a labor number, direct labor. They used the direct labor cost for hiring a new teacher without looking at the additional cost the town had to pay for that teacher, you know, the retirement and the healthcare and all of that. So to them, it looked easy, but the town was paying a lot more than that. And this is just adding that other component into the same mix. To give you a realistic view now, I would certainly hope that this doesn't just, it's not like setting a bar so high that nobody feels like they can hire any people because they can't come up with the front money. That would be a bad thing, you know, and because, you know, as Sasha points out, we do want to have more teachers, would like to have teachers to teach our students, so that would be a good thing. So we just hope this doesn't become like an impediment to adding the needed resource for but it's a great idea. It really is a innovative idea, and it's the right thing to be doing. But I like your installment plan. I think that would be, you know, one way to sort of address that, you know, pay it off a little at a time.
Or it's just like, what's the opportunity cost of doing this,
Yeah.
right?
It really is a one-time cost, whether you pay it now or if you pay it over the next 3 years. It's a one-time cost.
Correct,
Then
correct.
it goes away. Your point is that, you know, it's, you know, your $60,000 and it's zero next year. Or it's $30,000, 30,000, 30,000.
But if you have to balance the budget and you need teachers now, not in 3 years, then if you can allocate that cost over a time period in the future, then you can
Correct.
pay the salaries of those teachers today and have increased benefits for your dollar spent.
Right, and,
Like Wimpy and his hamburgers.
Right.
yeah, and,
Pay you Tuesday
you know,
for a
and
hamburger
like,
today.
like with this example, the 300,000 is typically the entire discretionary amount the school department has left over in its budget to do everything else it wants to try to do. So that's eating up everything else, right? We should start to do it. So, you know, the concept is great. No argument about that. But I just think, you know, hopefully everybody will be cautious about how it's implemented.
Well, that was a good word, cautious, because it's a balance there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stan.
Thanks, Dan.
Next on the agenda are minutes from forever ago, January 29th.
Tim, do you mind if I dial back to the calendar really quickly?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No problem. So, one thing that we've kind of, since we've had a few meeting changes, we haven't really discussed in recent weeks is our warrant letter. So, I know originally on the calendar, we had that as kind of a draft, like now, and we haven't really.
Pressure's on me. Is
We
it
hadn't-
structured?
So I think everyone we've already kind of divvied up sections, so if people can start digging into the the budget.
Part of me says, I was thinking about this the other day, on the warrant letter, your job is to cut what's done in by 2/3. So whatever you have to say for your section, do it in a third of what was given space before. It's very doable. I actually do think that. What are the most critical and important things in the world? At the same time, I like to say, geez, I want to leave it, you know, I'd like to see something that is cohesive, and so maybe I need to put the hands around it, and with Sasha's help, since she had a major hand on it last year. So between the two of us, I think we're still gonna structure it, trying to cut back, okay, you didn't need to say all this. This is what you need to say, and
What's an achievable timeline for everyone in terms of getting some? A while back, maybe not, but we can. Yeah, and we probably have those notes somewhere. I think it would be helpful. Our next meeting is when?
next meeting is the 12th, so we can bring it up to 12th. I'm sorry, 19th.
The 19th. Okay, so, That's only a couple weeks. How crazy is everyone's life?
It's my anniversary.
So you won't be here?
Oh, I know, I'll probably be here.
I've got concert tickets.
Is that a feasible, since kind of, most of the sections are things I think you've either worked on before or
You can
familiar with?
email your
Could we have
section,
some
that's
general
fine.
notes by that
Even I
point?
don't
I
know.
will send out an email tomorrow with the sections, I'll have to find my notes, with each of
And
the
you want
sections.
something like that's smart?
What I want is really
If you-
bullets or outlines of what you might or will say in your section of the report.
Okay.
Nothing has to be verbalized, written down.
If
I
you
want
want
Just the
to,
bullets.
and you
Oh,
have
yeah.
time to do it, and you wanna get there, so we're even further ahead, that's awesome.
Yep.
But that's not an expectation.
The minimum
that's
is,
not
I'm
there.
looking for, here are the 5 or 6 bullets that I'm going to address or want to address in my section. That way you get the juices flowing, and you have that information, like almost like an outline. It flows. You can get it done in a heartbeat. And I don't plan on being here till midnight again, for those who've ever been here, till midnight again. Thomas, I think you were there?
Yeah,
In the senior center,
fun nights.
right, working on a letter. So
Yeah.
that isn't gonna happen.
This is my 3rd year on FinCom, and we've never done that since I've been here, so.
It must be you.
Sasha's
You
got
got the
it.
touch.
What's our
It's not.
deadline to head
Got the
that?
good warrant letter
head that
juju
into the
going.
clerk?
I'm sorry?
What's our deadline to hand this piece of paper in to the
It
clerk?
is
Oh, the actual,
no later than April 5th, so
it's coming up.
it's
1
fast
month.
approaching. So
Yeah.
we really need probably something beforehand, because I think Tim's preference too is for everyone to see it, finalized before we go and
Sure.
feel comfortable, so we can't be doing it the,
I don't wanna see a minority report. I wanna have consensus, so.
Yes.
So is it going to be the same length, shorter, longer, what the warrant?
It's not gonna be a 2,200 page.
No,
warrant.
the same size as last year's or
2/3 of the
two-thirds
size.
of
The
that?
goal is gonna be,
To cut it. by
Cut it
a third.
down.
but cut it by 2/3, but we'll accept a half. Okay? Just think about it.
Yeah.
There is so much thaws and we's and thus. You can compress, you can get the thoughts in there. It takes a little bit more of a challenge, but that's part of the fun of writing.
Will it form see the attachment?
Refer to last year's letter.
There is a saying,
Refer pits
I,
also.
I had to write you a long letter because I didn't have enough time.
It's true.
Yeah. The other part though is, we oftentimes have repeated verbatim what the town manager has written in the budget book.
Yeah.
Now, there's absolutely is positive for you to reference extremely key important facets of this thing. For example, I've already talked to Liz about, I think this fixed cost on the retirement going up 8-9% every year versus our revenue stream is an important element for this report. The OPEB is an important element of this report. The schools are an important element of this report. But we all know what that stuff is. It's been reported, a lot of it's been reported in this document already, so I don't want to repeat it. And the other thing too, just as an example, when I got up to talk last year, I didn't know what to talk about. Why? Andrew,
all said
Jen Pryor, they took everything away from me. So I got up there basically doing a little song and dance and saying, hey guys, look at the book, look at the book. So my point is, even my slide presentation is gonna be cut way back, because I don't want to repeat what has already been said.
Basically, you're gonna say like, we have how many years in a row with a consensus budget? It makes the finance committee's job really easy. I mean, you still have to be a watchdog, you have to be looking and seeing where things are going. But when you have a town manager who has the ability to communicate well with the superintendent of schools, everything else runs well. Everything, the schools are better and the town is better, and it makes the job here, significantly different than it has been in the past.
If anything, we end up, we praise the current year operating budget as being consensus and well-balanced and well thought out. And honestly, over the last 3 or 4 years, the only thing I'm thinking about is, and I'm not crying wolf, but I do know something's gonna happen in the
Yeah.
future, so.
Yep.
That's all. So let's see if we can't put some bullets together. I will send out tomorrow I will identify what you all signed up for, volunteered. Do that right now, notes. Now, the next thing on the agenda, you done? Next thing on the agenda is the minutes from last time.
I hereby move that we accept the meeting minutes for the meeting date of January 29th, 2019, as written.
I second the motion.
Any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There's nothing else on the thoughts of our great members here. I appreciate your time and effort. Late meetings aren't but this is the toughest time of the year for us, so I appreciate everyone's time.
It's going to be early though, I mean, we'll be done with.
I'm in bed by this time, Chris.
I'm just, the first meetings go.
We are now adjourned. Thank you.